everyone, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Eli and I run my own small business, Crochet Made by Eli. In today's video, we're going to be going over how to make my crochet flower coasters. This is a free pattern that I have available over on my Instagram profile, and it does include two sizes for these coasters. So this is the small one, which we'll be going over in this video. And then we also have the bigger one. There isn't a huge difference in size, but the bigger one is slightly bigger, and it has 5 petals instead of the 6, just because of how the math works out. So if you're looking for the written pattern, make sure you check that out over on my profile. This pattern is beginner friendly, but you will need to have some sort of crochet knowledge going into it. All of the stitches used in this video are in the description below, so make sure you check that out first. And if you're brand new to crocheting, I do have a separate video on how to crochet for absolute beginners. These coasters work up very quick, so they're a great market make or just an easy project to have some fun spring decor. You can use them as coasters, or you can just use them for decorations around your house, whatever you want to do with them. So let's get into the video. For the materials, you'll need some cotton yarn in 2 colors. I'll be using yellow for the centers and blue for the petals. This yarn is the classic cotton by Loops and Thread, but any cotton will work. You'll need a crochet hook as well. I'll be using a 4mm. If you have a fairly tight tension, you may want to size up, or if you have a fairly loose tension, you may want to size down. You'll also need a pair of scissors, a darning needle, and I recommend using a stitch marker. Using our center color, we're going to start by making a magic ring. You can do this in whatever method is easiest for you, but we're going to make a magic ring and chain 1. Then in our magic ring, we're going to place 8 half double crochets. If you're using a stitch marker, you can place it on the first one now. So we've got 8 half double crochet. So now we can pull the tail of our magic ring and close up the circle. You'll want to pull this tight so that the center is fully closed, but make sure you don't snap your yarn when you're pulling it. This piece is going to be made in joined rounds, which means each round will start with a chain 1 and end with a slip stitch. So we're going to slip stitch into our first stitch. So we're going to insert our hook into that stitch. Sometimes it's a bit tight, so I use the hook part of my hook a little bit to help out. Then we'll place our slip stitch, and then we're going to tighten this slip stitch so that it's used just to join, but we don't accidentally crochet into it. To tighten it, you can pull your hook up and then pull the excess yarn, and do that a couple times until the slip stitch is as small as it can be. And that's what round 1 should look like. To start round 2, we'll start with a chain 1, and then we're going to do a half double increase into every stitch. So we're going to place 2 half double crochets into every stitch, and this is going to get us up to 16 stitches. Once you've completed your 16th stitch, we're going to slip stitch into our starting stitch. So insert into that starting stitch, place your slip stitch, and then tighten it again. And that's what we're looking like at round 2. For round 3, we're going to be placing slip stitches into the front loop only of each stitch. If you haven't worked into the front loop or back loop before, each stitch has 2 loops on the top. The one closer to us is called the front loop, and the one on the back is called the back loop. Typically when you crochet, you would insert your hook into both, but when we're working into the front loop, you're only going to pick up that front loop and not the back loop. For this round, our slip stitches need to be very loose because they're going to create this border around the center that makes a clean cutoff from the yellow to our petal color. For this round, we are not going to chain one, we're just going to go ahead and start with our slip stitches. We're going to start with the very first stitch that we just placed that tight slip stitch into, but remember only the front loop. I find using the point of my hook helps with this. So I pick up my front loop only, yarn over and pull through the stitch, and then pull through the loop to create our first slip stitch. I'm going to mark this with my stitch marker so it's a little bit easier to see. And again, these need to be loose slip stitches because we don't want it to pull our piece in at all. We want it just to be a border around it. So we'll go into the next one, pick up that front loop, and slip stitch, and repeat for every stitch around. This round, we are not going to end with a tight slip stitch. We are instead going to use a needle to close it, which I'll show you how to do. So once you have all 16 of your slip stitches, this is what it should be looking like, with those slip stitches sitting right on top of the piece, and the edge of it will be a little bit thicker. And remember, we are not going to end this with a slip stitch to the first stitch. We're instead going to close it with a needle. So to do this, we're going to start by pulling up a long loop, and you want it to be long enough that you can easily weave that end in. Then we're going to grab our scissors and snip the loop right at the top. This is going to leave you with two separate threads. One of them is attached to your ball, so you're going to pull that end to pull the thread out. And then this is going to leave you with just one thread very loose in there. Now we're going to grab our darning needle to close off this round. To close it off, we're going to use the needle to mimic one of the regular stitches so that it has a seamless edge. So when we're done, we're going to have a smooth edge like this, where you can't tell where the round starts or ends, and it all just looks like regular slip stitches. I'm going to take this stitch marker out, and we can thread our needle. We're going to start by inserting our needle into the second stitch. So right here is the first one, the first stitch of our round. We're going to skip that one and go right into that second one. So I'm just inserting it under both loops of that slip stitch. We're going to pull our needle through and pull it tight. Now we're not going to pull it as tight as it can go. We're just pulling it tight enough that it mimics one of the other stitches. Then we're going to take our needle and we're going to go back through the slip stitch that we came out of, the center there. So we're going to go straight into it, and we're going to go all the way to the back. So it's going to go through 3 different loops. That's our slip stitch, and then the stitches of round 2. So we're going to go just right down the middle of that slip stitch and out the back. Then we can pull that tight. And you can see that it looks like just a regular slip stitch. If you need to, you can adjust the tension a little bit. Just pull on the loops until it looks like a regular one. But you don't want to pull it too tight because we don't want the edge to go in. We want this to stay a nice circle. So once you've got it looking good, we can flip our piece over, and then we're going to tie a knot and then weave in these ends. I prefer to weave in both of the yellow ends right away, just so they're not in the way once we start our petals. So we're going to start by just tying a knot. I do this by inserting my needle into any loop right beside it. I pull it through, but not all the way. I'm going to pull it through so that it leaves just a little bit of a loop there. put my needle back through it, and then pull that tight to make the knot. But when you're pulling it, make sure it doesn't adjust the edge of your piece again. Pull it tight, but not too tight. Then we can just weave this through a few stitches. I like to go through the bottom of these half double crochets. So I just weave it through a few of them, making sure it's on the surface and not coming through the other side. So I go through a few and then pull my needle through it. And you'll see I'm just adjusting it a bit to make sure it stays a nice circle. Then for the final step, I'm going to split this yarn in half and use those two ends to do a final knot to make sure it's secured. With a weight 4 cotton yarn, you've got 4 individual threads. So I'm going to poke my needle into the yarn so that there's 2 threads on the top and 2 on the bottom, and then just pull my needle out. And then we've got 2 separate threads. Now with these 2 separate threads, I'm going to thread one back into my needle. And then we want to put it right into one loop right beside it. So we came out right here, so I'm going to go just back in there, one loop away, and pull that yarn through it. This way the 2 threads are just one loop apart, and now we can tie a knot with them. I usually tie 2 to 3 knots just to make sure it's fully secured. The thread is going to be a little bit more friable at this point, so you want to make sure you're not pulling it too tight to break the threads, but still tight enough that the knot is secured. Then we can just grab our scissors and snip off these ends. And now you can barely see the knot. There's just a little knot right on there, which will be on the back of our piece. While we've got the supplies out, we can just go ahead and weave this end in as well. So again, just going to thread my needle with that end. And then I'm going to weave it through a few more stitches so that I can tighten up this magic ring and make sure it is very secure and not going to come apart. So I'm just going to go through the top or the surface of a few of these stitches, pull my yarn through and pull it really tight. Then I'm going to tie a knot with the full thread. So I'm just going to go one loop apart again, pull it through, but leave a little bit of a loop, insert my needle back through that loop, and then pull it tight to make that knot. Once your knot is fully secured, then we're going to repeat the same step of just going through a few stitches, and then we'll split our yarn in half. So I've got it through a few stitches. I'm just going to make this yarn a little bit shorter. That way it's a little bit easier to split it. I'll insert my needle into that yarn and pull it up so that I have 2 separate threads. Put one of those threads into my needle. Then we'll go one loop away and tie a secure knot. And then just snip off those ends. All right, and that's what the back will look like. So you've got 2 little knots that aren't super visible, and then the front of our piece, which is a solid circle with this nice edge. Now you can put away your center color and grab your petal color. For round 4, we'll be using our petal color, so I'll be using this nice blue. And we're going to be attaching it into the front loop of round 2. This is going to be the same stitch that we placed these slip stitches in. So on the front of it, you can see our slip stitch. The loop that we're going to be attaching our yarn into is the loop right behind that slip stitch. And you can attach it into any of these stitches. So when we're looking at it from the top like this first loop here is part of our slip stitch. The loop directly behind it here is the front loop of round 2, and that's what we're going to be crocheting into. So for the entirety of round 4, we're only going to be working into the front loops of round 2. We are never going to work into these slip stitches from round 3, as again, we want them sitting in front of our round 4 color. So we can grab our yarn. We're going to start by making a slip knot, and then we want to tighten it so we have a fairly small loop, but still big enough that we can put our hook into it. So I'm just going to make sure mine is still big enough. Right. And we're going to grab our piece and we're going to pick up any of those front loops. And again, it's just the one loop, not the slip stitch, and none of the loops behind it. Then we can place our slip knot onto our hook and pull it through, but we want the knot of our slip knot behind the loop and only the loop part in front. Then we can chain 1, and if you need to, pull that tail so that way that knot stays behind it. For round 4, we're going to be working with single crochets, and our pattern is going to be 1 single crochet, 1 increase. So we're going to go into the next stitch. It doesn't have to be the one that we started in. We're going to pick up that front loop and place 1 single crochet. Then in the next stitch, picking up that front loop, we're going to do a single crochet increase. So 2 single crochets. So that's 1 and 2. And then we're going to repeat this for the entire round. And while you're doing this, just make sure you are only working into those front loops and not accidentally picking up the slip stitches anywhere. Some of my stitches are a bit tight, so you'll see me struggling a little bit to get into them, but that's just where I use that point of the hook to help me a little bit. As we get to the end of the piece, our last stitch is going to be where we made that slip knot, and that's because we went into the next loop when we started. I find this just helps create a bit more of a solid join there, and that way there's no hole there. So that is my last stitch. I'm just going to place my increase. And then we'll end it by placing a tight slip stitch to that first single crochet. And again, making sure it's as tight as you can make it. So after round 4, this is what we should be looking like. We have these slip stitches from our yellow sitting on top, and round 4 is just sitting behind it. The piece should still be fairly flat. If it's not, sometimes you can just stretch it a little bit to get out any curve that there is. For round 5, we'll start with a chain 1, and we're going to be placing 3 double crochet into that very first stitch. When I start a row on a double crochet, I like to start it with a standing double crochet. If you find this confusing, you can always chain 2 or chain 3, whatever you're used to, and use that to start your round. To make a standing double crochet, we're basically just stacking 2 single crochets on top of each other. So we'll start with inserting our hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, and you want to make sure they're pulled up to around the same height. Yarn over and pull through both, and that's a first single crochet. Then we're going to go into that front loop. So there's 1 front loop there at the front of our stitch. So we're just going to put our hook into that one, yarn over and pull through a loop, and then pull it up so that both loops are around the same height, yarn over and pull through, and that's our double crochet. I'm just going to put a stitch marker on the top of it so it's a little bit easier when we end the round. With your standing double crochet, you're going to have a loop on top, which is your second single crochet, and then you should have 2 loops on the side for your first single crochet and your chain 1. So it looks kind of like 2 chains and then the top of your stitch. Then we're going to place 2 more double crochet in that same stitch. Then we're going to skip the next stitch and place a single crochet in the second one. So we're going to skip this first one and go right into that second stitch. So we'll place a single crochet there. Now we're going to skip a stitch, and in the second one from our single crochet, we're going to place 5 double crochet. And these are all going to be in the same stitch. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Then we're going to repeat this to create the other 4 petals. So we'll skip a stitch, place a single crochet, skip the next stitch, and 5 double crochet. Skip a stitch, single crochet, skip a stitch, 5 double. Skip a stitch, single crochet, skip a stitch, 5 double. Skip a stitch, single, skip a stitch, 5 double. Then we'll skip a stitch and place a single, and this is going to get us back to the beginning of the round. The last thing we need to do is finish off this first petal, and we're going to do that by placing 2 more double crochet in the same stitch. So right here is the original stitch that we placed 3. We're going to place 2 more right in that hole. So inserting into that same stitch, we'll place 1 double crochet and then a second one. So now we're back to our 5 double crochet, and then we just slip stitch to the top of our starting one. As usual, make sure this is a tight slip stitch, so tighten it as much as you can. And then we've got just 1 round left of the piece. For round 6, we'll start with a chain 1, and we're going to do a single crochet increase in that first stitch. So we're going to go right into that first one, place 1 single crochet, and then a second one in the same spot. I'm going to mark it with a stitch marker as well. Then in the next stitch, we'll place another single crochet increase. So that is 2 single crochet increases. Then we're going to skip the next stitch and do a slip stitch in the next one, which is going to be where our previous single crochet was, which is where the little point is between the petals. So we'll place a slip stitch here, and this can just be a normal one. It doesn't need to be super loose or super tight, just a regular slip stitch. Then we can start our repeat for the round. So we're going to skip the next stitch and then place a single crochet increase in the next 3 stitches. So skip that stitch. Then into the second one, we're going to place 2 single crochet to make our increase. The top of the petal, we'll do another single crochet increase. And then the side, another single crochet increase. And that's going to be our repeat for the round. So we're going to skip a stitch and place a slip stitch, skip a stitch, and do a single crochet increase. Then another increase, and a third increase, skip a stitch and slip stitch, skip a stitch, and then start our increases. So that's our first increase. That's our second increase. That's our third increase. So we'll skip a stitch and slip stitch, skip a stitch and single crochet increase, then another single crochet increase, and then our third increase, skip 1, slip stitch, skip 1, and single crochet increase. That's our first one. That's our second one. And that's our third one. Then we'll skip a stitch and do our slip stitch. And then we're almost back at the beginning of the round. To finish it, we're going to skip 1 stitch and do a single crochet increase to complete that last petal, because we started with 2 of our increases since we're starting at the top. So skip a stitch and then 2 single crochets. And now, since this is our final round, we're not going to end with a slip stitch. We're going to repeat the same thing from our center and close it with a needle. So we're going to pull up a long loop and snip it at the top. Then pull out our working yarn. So that leaves us with just our one end. We're going to thread that needle. And then we're going to repeat the same step on how to close it. So we're going to skip that first stitch. That one is our first stitch. We're going to go into our second stitch. Pull our needle through, tight enough that it matches the tension of the other ones, but not too tight. Then we're going to go back down the stitch that we came out of, and we're going to go into the center of it. So right there into the center. And we're going to just go through 2 loops, which is our single crochet and then just a loop below it. Pull our needle and then adjust your yarn until it matches the other ones. Then you should have a nice finished edge. We're going to flip it over and tie a knot to secure it. So just go through any loop near it. Pull your yarn through, but not all the way, so that you leave a little loop. Put your needle back through that loop and pull it tight so that you create a knot. Then we're going to weave it through a few stitches. And again, we're going through the surface of these so that our yarn is not going to show through on the front at all. I like to go until I get to a really solid part, which for me is the top of one of our petals. Pull that tight, but make sure that it's not pulling the edges of your piece tight. So do a little adjusting if you need to. Then we're going to split this yarn in half. Put one half back onto your needle. And then thread it back through just one loop away. And then we can tie our knot. And then we can snip our ends. Then we've just got one tail left, so we'll just need to weave that one in as well. So threading our needle like normal, we're going to weave it through a few of the stitches. I'm going to go this way where there's some solid ones. And then I usually weave it until I get to the center of one of those double crochets, and then we can place our final knot. So we'll split our yarn so we have our two threads. Insert one into our needle and move it just one loop away. Then we can tie our knots to finally secure it. There we go. And now you should have a finished coaster. So you should now have your very own flower coaster. If you made one using this tutorial, I would love to see what you guys made. So feel free to tag me in any post you have. I can be found at the same username on all social media, CrochetMadeByEli, so make sure you tag me. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you're looking for a written pattern, I do have one available for both sizes over on my Instagram. If you are looking for a video tutorial in the bigger size, I'm going to be getting one out in the next week or two, but make sure you leave a comment that you're interested so that I know someone is looking for it. Now, if you're wanting to sell any of the pieces that you make, you absolutely can. Please make sure you credit me as the pattern designer anywhere that you're sharing it or posting it. Now, even though this is a free pattern, I'm not looking to have it reposted or shared anywhere, so please do not share the actual pattern. You can share your pieces, but not the details of the pattern. If you watched this video all the way to the end, thank you so much for supporting me and supporting my channel. Make sure you give the video a like, and feel free to subscribe to my channel as I post new videos every week and sometimes twice. Now, hopefully, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!